When we looked at different 3D printers and what we could maybe use, what would work the best, one machine that we settled on because it had a low price point but also could produce a good quality color model was this M-Core machine, and this is a proprietary machine. There's one company that makes it in the world. A little hard to source it, but we finally got our hands on one. What I like about it is you can have some concept. You've got it in some sort of a 3D model, and a good watertight SketchUp model will work just as well as anything else, as long as you've got something that doesn't have very thin walls or edges. You can generate that model. Most 3D printers nowadays will use a format called STL. You can save that out of SketchUp, but this particular machine, also the OBJ format, right out of SketchUp. You can add solid colors, or you can overlay simple images onto that final model that you're trying to create. Now you'd think this is a 3D printer, but the next step is actually to get color, is to print in 2D. So we just have a conventional inkjet machine, prints both sides of the page. It traces around the edges where you want to have color. It gives itself a little bit of wiggle room in case it's not perfectly calibrated in the next step. But so a thick kind of color border around where the edges should be. Each page is barcoded by the machine, so it can't possibly get out of sequence. Then all you've got to do is take that stack of papers, load them correctly into the 3D machine, and then it has its own process. So a couple of ways to achieve color. Either you do it when you're modeling, export the OBJ, or in the proprietary software, we can dial into any RGB color, or like I said, overlay images. We can also add text, 2D text, I should say, to a surface. We've done that in a couple instances to label some of the parts and pieces. Within the coloring software, assuming that it passes that quality control, you then save a different format. There's a final step in the software where you can arrange and print your model so you understand how it's going to be printed on the print bed. If there's room, you can duplicate it 2 or more times and print several in one run. That's very handy. It doesn't take a tremendous amount of additional time to print more if the overall height of the model is kept to a minimum. So regardless of what we want to print on this type of machine, we'll orient that model so that the z-axis, or the height, is as minimized as it can be. The 3D process is quite simple with this. Again, we're talking about paper and glue, and if you did color, then you've got the ink as well, right? So ink and paper, and a very fine blade will go through and cut, and then the glue wheel comes along, applies glue to the entire surface of one sheet of paper. So it'll do precision glue on what's going to be the finished part, and just kind of tack glue on what's going to be the waste part. At that point, it grabs the next page in the stack, places that directly on top of the stack, presses the entire thing down with an incredible amount of force, and then begins to cut the next page. So then cutting, then gluing, next page, press, cut, and glue, press, cut, and glue. Repeat that, 200, 300, 500 times until you've got the entire model. So what you end up with feels like an old phone book, just a big stack of paper. And the last step for you is to break that apart to reveal your model.